welcome back to LA Live. My name is Divina, your host for today's episode. So, I didn't get a chance to really get out or do much this past week. It was just a really hectic week for me. I was really busy. I still wanted to make sure that I posted today though, so I decided we would make a video that was more LA oriented, since this is LA Live. Okay, so I have like some notes here of what I want to talk about. So basically today I want to do a story time about my experiences on the bus. Now I know that may not sound like the most exciting subject to hear about, but believe me, it was an interesting time. Oh, and there's my cat Shadow. She's a baby still. She's one of our newest additions. She's almost a year old. Okay, anyway, getting back to business. Okay, so my very first time on the bus. Well, my very first time on the bus was when my cousin was teaching me how to get to school. He showed me what buses I needed to take so that I could get to school every morning because I didn't have a car yet. Everything went fine when I first went with him, of course. But then, my very first time by myself, I took the wrong bus. And I know, he explained it right, he told me which bus to take, but I was using this app. I don't know, it's been so long since I used it, I already forgot what it was called. But I was using this app that told me when the buses would arrive, and it said that the bus that I needed was there. And so I looked, and I did see that the number, I think the bus that I was waiting for was 394, but this one just said 94, and I was like, well, maybe it just, this bus will take me where I need to go as well, because some buses, they go, somewhat the same route, and then they turn somewhere else. So I was like, okay, you know what, I'll just get on, and I'm sure it'll be fine. So I got on the bus, and it started turning before the stop that I needed. I was like, oh, my goodness, great. And I was like, well, maybe it'll circle back around. The bus stopped and I didn't get off, and he was like, this is the last stop. And I was like, oh, great. So the bus that I needed to take was on San Fernando Road, and the corner that I needed to get off at was San Fernando and Osborne. This one turned off at I don't remember the street anymore. It started with a T. Are you good? You need some attention? Hey. Anyway, okay, so I went to the bus driver and I was like, oh, I got off on the wrong bus. I was like, how can I get back to the route that 394 is on? And it's like, well, there's no other bus that's going to pick you up here. You're going to have to walk back to San Fernando. So I was like, great. So I started walking back towards San Fernando. I was pretty far from San Fernando at this point, but thankfully not too far. It was still walkable. But but what I was trying to do that day, it wasn't actually first day of classes, it was orientation. So I was going to be late for sure because I had to walk back to the closest bus stop. As I'm walking back to the bus stop, this is when it gets interesting. I promise the story is interesting. As I'm walking back to the bus stop, this car starts pulling up next to me. And I was like, oh, sweet baby Jesus, why? Why? He starts pulling up next to me. He rolls down his window. I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, hey, do you need a ride? And I was like, no, sir, I'm fine. He was like a man probably in his 40s. He had some gray hair. And he was like, no, come on, like, I'll give you a ride. I'll take you where you need to go. And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm really late for my orientation, but better I get there late than never. I was like, I'll probably get into this man's car and disappear into the distance forever. It's only my first day traveling by myself in LA, and I'm already on the verge of getting kidnapped. So those were like the thoughts that were crossing in my head. And I was like, no, sir, I don't get into strangers' cars, but thank you. And he's like, oh, but we can get to know each other. I was like, I don't want to get to know you like that, sir. No, thank you. And I was like, really, I'm fine. I don't need a ride. And so I turned away and I just kept walking, and he kept riding beside me, and we were getting close to some businesses. So I was like, well, if worse comes to worse, I'll go inside those businesses, I'll be even more late, but I'll be safe. At least I'll make it there eventually. But thankfully, before we even got to the businesses, he pulled away and started going at a normal speed. I was like, awesome. I'm okay. I'm okay. So eventually I did get all the way back to San Fernando Road. I got on the bus that I needed. I got off at the right stop. I was really late, but I did make it, and I didn't miss too much. They were just starting to do the group work and all that jazz. So yeah, so very first time getting on the bus by myself was kind of scary because I almost got kidnapped. So definitely be careful. One of my biggest pieces of advice, if you want to move to LA, that you should definitely be very, very aware of your surroundings. It's a very populated city. You never know who might be watching you or that sort of thing, you know, so just be careful. Okay, what's next on my list? Okay, the stop that I would always get off on at Osborne and San Fernando. The first time I walked up to the stop, I couldn't understand. I mean, it was kind of a sunny day, so I thought maybe they were just avoiding the sun. But all these women were sitting, or not sitting, but standing behind the bus stop. You know, like there's like a bench and like a little kind of cage thing so you can be out of the elements if you're, you know, raining or whatever. And all these women were sitting, or not sitting, I keep wanting to say sitting. They were standing out on like behind. I'm sorry, I'm just like a tongue-tied this morning, I guess. Okay, so all the women, they were standing behind the little setup there to sit down, and I looked at them and I was like, you know, whatever. So I sat down because nobody else was sitting down, and I immediately understood why they were all hiding behind the seating area of the bus stop. As soon as the light turned red and cars came to a stop, all this catcalling. Oh my goodness. I just was like, what is wrong with these men? Like, ooh, mama, you look so fine and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, are they? First of all, does that ever work for you guys? Please let me know. Do you ever yell out your freaking car window at a woman and say borderline rude things about them and comment on their body or whatever? Does a woman ever turn around and be like, oh my gosh, thank you, like, yes, let me hop in your car and let's ride off happily into the sunset? I really don't think that works. So why do people do it? I really was just so mind blown by this. I had never been, you know, catcalled like that before or whatever in my life, so I was really surprised. But yeah, just all these things like, oh, you're so pretty, like, let me take you out, blah, blah, blah. I was just like, and, you know, the girls and women behind me were just like, yeah, that's why we don't sit there. We avoid that. And, even, like, guys in, like, these big semis would, like, honk their horns and stuff at us. And I was just like, I'm just trying to get to school. Please leave me alone. So there was that. That was fun. Okay, then there was this one day. I had choir rehearsal at my university. My uncle had been awesome and was actually able to drop me off. He dropped me off really early though because he had work. I don't know, sometimes something gets into her. Anyway. He dropped me off really early though because he had work, and while I was there I realized that I forgot my choral score, and it's like, wow, awesome, Divina, you're so smart. You came here for choir rehearsal and you didn't even bring your music. And my choir director was pretty strict and very like no nonsense, so if I would have even thought of showing up to my rehearsal without my score, I probably would have been chewed out to no end. So that was not an option. So I had enough time to get on the bus, go all the way back to my house where I was staying with my uncle, and then come all the way back on the bus to make it in time for rehearsal. Basically, there was no point in my uncle dropping me off early because I had to go all the way back and waste all this time anyway. Fun, right? Okay, so on my way back to the house, this was just not a good experience for me, this all-around bus trip. Because I was approached by so many weirdos. Okay, so I get on the bus on my way back home, and I'm sitting next to this woman, and mind you, that was like my number one thing. I always tried to find a seat next to a woman, and most of the time, even if there was a row open, if that was like the only option that I had was an open row, I'd sit on the outside seat because I didn't want someone to just sit next to me. I wanted to make sure that I allowed somebody to sit next to me. More often, I would pick women. So I sat down next to this woman, and I was feeling pretty comfortable. All of a sudden, feel this man get really close to me, and I was sitting in the seat right next to the double doors that go out. And he bends down to get closer to me and was like, "Hello, beautiful." And I look up, and I kid you not, this man had orange teeth. Orange teeth. It was so gross. And I mean, immediately when I saw that, I was kind of like, "Oh, hello." And he was like, "Can I sit with you?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, but I'm already sitting with someone." And he's like, "Oh, right. Can I get your phone number?" It's like, "No, sorry." And, he like smiles at me with this great big set of orange teeth. And his gums looked all gross too. It was just nasty. I mean, I was kind of like, I didn't smell his breath, but I was really holding my breath because I was not sure what kind of a smell was going to hit me. So yeah, so he was just like, that's unfortunate. And then he turned away towards the doors, and I was just like, "Please, God, let him get off before I need to get off. Let him get off before I need to get off." And he rode for a really long time, and he was getting really close to the stop that I needed, and I was like, "I really don't want anybody to follow me." Thankfully, he did get off quite a few stops before I needed to get off, so I was in the clear. Thank God. Then I got my choral score, I got back on, and I went back to school. And so on my way back to school, I ran into this other gentleman, and he was with his son. And I felt a little more comfortable because I was like, "Oh, he's with his kid." Like, he started up conversation with me, but I was like, he's with his kid. I'm sure he's not going to do anything, like, stupid. Wrong. Just wrong. So we were making conversation a little bit, and he noticed my choral score, and he's like, "Oh, are you going to the university, CSUN?" And I was like, yeah, that's where I'm headed." And he was like, "Oh, that's cool. It's a really good school." And I was like, "Yeah, it is. I really like it." It was only my first semester there, but I was really enjoying it. And a pretty normal conversation up until we got on the bus. And we got on the bus, and I sat down, and he sat down like one seat behind me with his kid, and he was like, like, "I might never see you again, so I just have to tell you, I think you're so beautiful, like one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen." And I was just like, "Oh my goodness, dude, in front of your kid." And I was just like, "Oh, thanks. I appreciate it." I didn't really have any compliments to give back. Like maybe I could have said, "Your kid's cute." But then he was just like, "Would it be possible to see you again?" And I was like, No, definitely not." And then his kid's like, like, "Dad," he said, I can't remember exactly what he said at this time, but he said something about them being on their way to go see his mom. And I'm just like, "Really, dude, you're taking your son to go see his mom? Like, I don't know if you guys are still together or not, but you're like sitting here trying to hit on someone who's so much younger than you? Please stop. What kind of example are you giving your kid?" So I felt a little bit uncomfortable, but they got off eventually, and he made sure to say goodbye and like call me beautiful again and tell me that he hoped I had a very blessed life. Which I appreciate. I want to have a blessed life. Actually, with my shirt today, it says blessed. Okay, anyway, so there was that. What do we got next? Oh my goodness. Okay, so there was another time. And this is what I mean. This was the one time that I did not sit on the outside of my seat and I sat on the inside. There, on the corner of Van Nuys and San Fernando, there was always a lot of people who got on the bus. So, I usually did sit on the inside at that stop because a lot of people needed to get on and a lot of people needed to sit down. So, to my very unfortunate regret, a guy sits next to me. He didn't say anything to me at all at first, but I was sitting there and I noticed that he was getting really close to me. I was like, okay, well, this person is invading my bubble. So I had a little bit of room on the inside, so I scooted over a little bit. He scoots over a little bit more. And I was like, really, dude? Really? He scoots over enough that he, like, presses his thigh against mine. And I was like, okay, now I'm uncomfortable. Putting your thigh against my thigh? No, dude. Like, there is plenty of space for you in your seat for you not to be touching me. So I had my little handbag, and I put my handbag in between us. I put my handbag, and I was like, okay, that should give him a hint. And tell me that this man, oh my goodness. Okay, so let me like stretch out my leg here real quick. So like, here's his hand on his thigh, right? He pulls out a pinky. He reaches his pinky over and touched my thigh and started like touching my thigh. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? So I got really mad because I was obviously giving a hint here by putting my bag in between us, like, bro, you need to give me some space. Okay, so now the man thinks that he can touch me? No. So I looked over and looked straight at him, and I was like, you need to stop. And I was mad. And so his hand all of a sudden went back, but he never said anything to me. He didn't even look at me. All he kept doing was looking at me in the corner of his eye. But when I did that, he stopped, and then maybe a couple stops later, he got off. So, which brings me back to people, you know, especially women, if you end up having to take public transportation, which I had to the first year that I was there in LA, it's great for getting to know the city because, you know, you go through everything. You don't just go the same route or, you know, just get to where you're going and that's it. You see lots of stuff on a bus route. But you know, definitely if you feel uncomfortable in a situation like that, you need to say something. And if the person does not respond like he did, where he stopped doing what he was doing, then you need to get up and you need to, you know, tell the bus driver or get to another spot or, you know, be sure that you're safe. You know, there was a lot of people on the bus, so I'm sure that if he would have tried to like grab me or something, or if I really needed help, I'm sure that I would have been able to get help, possibly from the bus driver. There was a male bus driver that day too. So, yeah, that was probably one of the most intense moments that I felt because at first I was nervous, but then I was just flat out angry because I gave a sign, don't touch me, dude, and then literally pinky. Takes his freaking pinky and touches me. No. That's not okay. Not okay. Okay, so another interesting time that I had, this was while I was waiting on the bus stop to get on the bus. So I'm standing there, I'm waiting for the bus, I'm ready to go to school, I'm listening to music in my headphones, just kind of off in my own world. And then I started hearing like barking sounds. And you know, just looking around, making sure that there wasn't like a dog that somebody let loose or something that was coming my way or anything. You know, because dogs can definitely hurt you too if they're aggressive or anything like that. My cat, man, she just decided to go nuts today. Okay. And so I look over to the corner adjacent from me that way, and I realize that it's a woman barking. And I was like, what is going on here? So she definitely looked homeless. She looked very dirty and stuff, and her clothes were ripped, and her hair looked really matted and stuff. Definitely looked like she hadn't had a shower in a while. So she starts barking in the corner of the street, and And I was just like, okay, well, I'm just going to ignore that. But it was kind of hard to, just like, kind of kept peeking over, seeing what she was doing. Sometimes she would stop and she'd like start going around. It was so funny though. This guy, he comes walking up to the corner. He had a book bag too. I think he was another student. He was probably coming over to the bus stop. And he gets there at the corner and she runs up to him and barks in his face. And this poor guy literally he like did one of these like and he almost tripped over himself trying to get away from her, and he literally gunned it down the street, probably to go to the next street light to get over to another bus stop. But I can only imagine the shock that this kid had when this woman just straight up barked in his face. And I'm sure she smelled awful too, so it was just like all this stuff happening. Yeah, that was crazy. I mentioned already before in my story time about homeless people that I had that one experience with the lady who also seemed to be homeless, and she was going crazy on the bus, and she decided to lean back and open up her legs and hit everybody with an awful smell that you should never smell. It was, yeah, just straight up awful. But yeah, so that one was in my story time for homeless people. I went a little bit more into detail with that one. That same day, actually, when I saw the lady barking, I was like, sheesh, already a weird day, you know? So we're getting ready to get on, and there's a person coming with a wheelchair. And I know, sometimes people are rude, and they just like want to hurry up and get on the bus and grab a seat, and they don't want to let the person in the wheelchair go first. You know, you should definitely let the person in the wheelchair go first. I stepped back when I saw the person in the wheelchair because I was like, oh, okay, like this person's got to go first. But there was still a crowd of people that hadn't noticed the person in the wheelchair. So this one lady starts getting really upset. And she was like, started yelling at people, get out of the way, like, get out of the way for the person in the wheelchair, starts pushing people. I definitely think she could have gone about this better, just maybe said to people, hey, excuse me, like we need to make room for this person in the wheelchair, like if you could please step back and let them get on first. She didn't have to start touching people, shoving people, definitely because people are pretty weary about that. My cat is smelling my camera. Stop it. Okay. Oh, she's lifting up a paw. She wants to swap my camera. Stop it. My goodness. Okay, so if my camera goes down, you know why. Anyway, so she starts shoving people and whatnot, and this one lady, she had a baby in her hands, and she pushed on her and the baby, and she's like, hey, like, you just pushed on my kid. Don't touch me or my baby. And oh my goodness, the lady pushing people got so mad. She was all like, you need to get out of the way. She said, go back to your country. I was like, what? Go back to your country? We just escalated to a whole new level. And this would probably, if I would have videotaped it, I probably could have put this under one of those Karen moments. But the lady was like, I was born here, stupid, and just turned into a whole ordeal. And the wheelchair person is like looking at them like, man, I'm just trying to get on. Like, I don't need this, but thanks for making room for me anyway. So they kind of start arguing that, and I was like, oh God, I hope this doesn't get physical. She's got a baby in her arms. But they were just kind of like yelling at each other, like this far away from each other, like, oh, like, you people are the ones messing up America. And I was like, you people? Who are you talking about, bro? I mean, she just said she was born in America. She's American, so you just, yeah, I don't know. People are crazy. We definitely have been in a, I'm sure you've noticed with like news and stuff, we've been in a hateful time. There's a lot of hate going around. So that lady was definitely full of hate as well. So yeah, those are some of my highlights. I probably could think of more experiences that I've had on the bus. I mean, I fell asleep a couple times on the bus. Yeah, like 2 times I fell asleep and missed my bus stop. The first time I had I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 blocks past where I needed to get off. That was not good. I woke up and was just like, oh my God, I do not recognize where I am. And then I like pulled out my GPS on my phone and was like, shoot, I'm really far away from where I need to be. And I jogged back. And then another time I fell asleep. Oh my gosh. So you know how like Los Angeles is divided into like sub areas like Northridge, Arleta, Van Nuys, Pacoima, all these different like sub areas that belong to LA. I woke up in a totally different section. I think I needed to be in, I was going towards Reseda, and I woke up in Sunland, and I was like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. I was so far off from where I needed to be, and I was so lucky both of those times, though, because I left home early. I always gave myself extra time for anything that might happen on the bus, crazy people, miss my stop, that sort of thing. I was tired, and so thank God I left early that day, and I still had extra time, and I still made it on time to work. But yeah, I woke up in a totally different area of LA, and it was like, great. Oh, you know what? I almost forgot one. This is a good one too. I was in Hollywood. I was taking a class, a songwriter's class, and it was pretty late at night. My uncle, I didn't really like to bother him with this sort of thing because he had to get up at work really early, like 5 in the morning, and this class didn't really end until 9 o'clock at night. And I remember that the last bus, later at night, the bus times, they start spacing out longer. They start coming every couple of hours or every hour or so. So whenever I got out of that class at 9, I needed to run to the bus stop and make it there because the bus would come between 9:25 and 9:30. And that would be the last bus before like 11 o'clock at night or something of that sort, if I remember correctly. So I would run over there, and I dressed kind of nice to my songwriter's class because it was kind of a networking thing too. So I would take dresses sometimes or whatever. I was in a dress that night, and as I was running to the bus stop because I didn't want to miss it, there was a car that was coming up in an alleyway, a really nice Lamborghini, all blacked out, tinted windows and stuff. But when I passed, they started revving their engine at me, and I was like, oh, no, 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 no. I am on a mission to get to the bus stop. I have no time for you. I heard the window roll down, and they yelled after me and were like, hey, hey. And I was like, I am not turning back. I'm act like I don't hear you. I am trying to get where I need to go. Anyway, I get to the bus stop, and I sit down, and I look at the app, and it says that it's going to be there in 5 minutes. So I made it just in time. I was like, whew, great, we made it. Now I just got to sit here and wait. Honestly, though, I did appreciate the times when I got there right as the bus was pulling up, because usually I would kind of wave at the bus driver, and it was sometimes the same bus driver, so they kind of knew that they were like, oh, like that girl gets on. So so times when the bus was like right there, I would get right on, and I would be on my way home, and later on at night, there's not as many people on the bus, so it was pretty chill. That night, since I had a little bit of extra time, I was kind of like, wary of my surroundings. I was looking and waiting and stuff. And so this guy comes up and sits down next to me. And, I kind of stiffen up. I'm like, okay, well, hopefully he doesn't talk to me. Yeah, he talked to me. He was like, hey, cutie, how are you? And I was like, ugh, please, why? So, I was like, hello. I'm good. How are you? And he was like, I'm good. He's like, you got a man? And I was like, yeah, I did not, but I was like, yeah, I got a man. And he was like, oh, that's unfortunate. And he was like, but we could still, like, have a thing or be friends. And I was like, sir, I'm way too young for you. And he was like, how old are you? And I was like, 18. He's like, well, you're legal. And I was like, idiot. Why did I say 18? I should have said like 16 or something. Because, ew, I hate when guys say stuff like that. Like, oh, but you're legal. Like, ew, no. That does not mean anything. I am still a child compared to you, you 40-something-year-old man. And yeah, so he was just like, he kept talking to me and trying to make conversation. And he was like, where are you headed? And I was like, I'm going home. And he's like, oh, you want me to take you? And I was like, no. And at that moment was when the bus started pulling up. I was like, no, the bus is right here. I'll be home soon. And he was like, oh, he's like, well, I hope I see you around here again. If I saw you again, bro, I would run in the other direction. No. Mm-mm-mm. And then he was just like, will you have a nice night and like stay beautiful or something like that. And I was like, yeah, thanks, dude. I got on the bus and that was pretty much it after that. Uneventful after that. So yeah. So there you go. Some stories of public transportation in LA. The bus, sheesh, it was an interesting place. I mean, you could, never knew who you could run into on those buses. Yeah, I guess just the moral of the story is be safe, be aware of your surroundings, have somebody on speed dial if you have to, or if you want to avoid getting talked to. I definitely pretended to be on the phone a couple of times when weird people sat next to me. A lot of the times I avoided awkward conversations that way, pretending to be on the phone. Yeah, it's just it's a part of the LA experience. So many people get on the bus. I was lucky enough that when I went to like high school and stuff, I had a bus that came and picked me up at my house. My cousins, they always had to ride the bus, like the public bus, in order to get to school. I hated dealing with the public bus, so I think it would be unfortunate to have to deal with that starting so young. Because, you run into all sorts of weird people and predators, for sure, on the bus. But yeah, so that is my story time for today. I hope that it was fun. I've had some interesting experiences. And I promise that next week I'll come back with something more interesting. I'm not sure what I'm going to record just yet, but I'm going to make some time this weekend to get some good footage for you guys. Alright? So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed listening to my stories about the bus. I hope you enjoyed my cat going crazy and running around for no absolute reason. And please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me your thoughts. If you have any stories of the bus, please do share. I always enjoy to hear other people's experiences. Alrighty, guys. Thanks.